Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. Well, I know you've heard me say this so many times. I'm excited for this conversation, but it's always true. I can't help myself. But this is really an exciting topic for me. You've probably heard me mention, I think, on a couple episodes that right now I'm doing this online forest therapy certification thing course, and there's like 11 modules. I'm only on module 2, but I'm super excited because, again, anyone who knows me knows how much I love nature. I say that is what heals me all the time. I love to kayak, I love to hike. When I was running, I loved trail running because it was just such a different feel than pounding the pavement. So I love that. I'm all about my bird feeder, all that nature. So I'm excited to talk with someone who can really relate to that. But not only that, she's going to talk to us about survival skills. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite shows. For a while, I was totally into Naked and Afraid, to the point where when I'd be outside and I'd see ants, I'd go, ooh, that's a good source of protein. And I never ate them, but I did look at them for a minute that way. So, and I'm looking here, I got my little prop here. I think to be a survivalist, I would need more than this. This is my deep woods off. So I really say, as much as I love nature, I don't believe for 2 seconds that I could totally survive for very long. But I do like to say also at the top every week, you know me, I like to say how I know my guests because I'm really a big fan of or encouraging people to be curious, to get out there, to connect with people in the community. Isolation is dangerous. Isolation is unhealthy. So it's really great to get out there, learn something new, meet someone new. When you're at a mixer and you get someone's business card, don't write it off as like, oh, I don't need a new whatever insurance plan. Get to know the person, keep their card. You never know when this person might show up in your life and be able to help you or vice versa. So this week's guest is someone I'm meeting virtually for the first time, and is someone that I was introduced through someone that has been on the podcast. And I think she's been on at least once, Kristen Martelli, who does somatic movement, and she does a lot more than that. She has Grow, which is a business, and she does I know she does massage work, and a lot of it is referred from doctors. So she's a wonderful, healing individual, lovely person. Kristen had said, you know what? I think I have someone who may make a great guest. Let me just make sure she's cool with it. And sure enough, here we are. So without further ado, my guest this week is Stephanie Uhranowsky. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. And then when Kristen messaged me, actually, she's like, "Are you going to be cool with going on a podcast?" She's like, I talked to my friend about this and like I think you would be a great fit. What do you think? And she's like, I told her about like your survival stuff and your love of nature, and I was like, yeah, please let's connect, because that's also something too with me, just connecting with local community and actually being able to talk and branch out, because I to be honest, I'm kind of like a homebody, even though I
Mm.
understand that community is so important. I'm kind of a big introvert and my favorite place is home. So kind of bringing me out of my turtle shell and getting me to have discussions and to meet people, like that's something that it it can push me out of my comfort zone, but if you get me excited to talk about things that I love or to listen to other people's stories and their lived experiences, that lights me right up. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that, and one of my dearest friends, and he listens all the time, Oliver, shout out Ollie. He teases me about my intro where I'm like always encouraging people to get out, whether it's, to a business mixer, like a networking event, or to an art show, or to whatever where you're connecting with people. He teases me, he's like, nah, like yourself, he likes to be home. And I get that because trust me, I joke that I don't know if I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, because I can do stand-up comedy. I taught part-time for, so I can be comfortable in front of people. And I actually do enjoy talking to people. Like I really do. But at the same time, I love my couch. I'm not going to lie. I love my backyard. When I do go out anymore, I don't want my table when I'm at a restaurant or whatever to be near anybody. So I get that, and I get that comfort. And so and I'm going to get back to you. I'm sorry, I don't want to hijack this, but like I do find it as an interesting thing that I think a lot of people experience, because the research shows us that isolation is so bad for us that we're built that way. I guess we need connection, we need people, but I also at the same time understand that sometimes it's too much and you want to decompress and you want to stay where you feel the safest and most comfortable. So I totally get that.
Yeah, and it's true. Because I am a lover of solitude too, I thoroughly enjoy in being in my own company. And actually where I'm sitting right now is my back porch where when spring hits and it's a little bit warmer, you will not find me inside. You will find me here at any point. I'm until dark and then I have to go in, but it's just that's something where I just think it's balanced because even though I love solitude, which I guess can be seen or can also kind of be adjacent to isolation, I really enjoy being around people. And I feel like it's something that just lights me up, and having
Yes.
those conversations and being introduced to new people. And I think that's something too where we're lacking, where we're all kind of in our individual silos. And what is community, like that's something that keeps coming up for me now, is that if I were to consider community in our current modern society and our landscape, what does that look like? And to me it's like I think that that's a thing that we're lacking in a way where we may connect through work, we might connect through seeing people at the coffee shop that we go to for our coffee every day, but in the end, or even our reliance on, is that how do we ask for help, how do we get support from people? And I think that's a thing that I also too, just based on my own upbringing and lived experiences, that I need to get better at, that I there's things that I need to learn in that regard. And to me it's just a continuous journey to take that, but I think it's an important one. And yeah, pushing out of my comfort zone so that, yeah, come up to my safe space, stay in my house all I want, but again, making friends and especially connecting with other women locally, since
Yeah.
and I know we're going to get to it, but I'm a born and raised Northeast PA native. I've never lived anywhere else. I was born here. And to me, just the community that's being built here, and also coming up here, I used to work in Scranton, so I know the community is amazing down there. And just even going like 35 minutes outside of it in the country, a little bit in Greentown, I kind of in a way feel somewhat isolated because the ability to just take a drive and be downtown and connect with people or go to all the awesome things that are happening down there. I'm somewhat removed being up here. So I like to try to keep those relationships going and stay connected to those people. And I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned just two things I wanted to follow up, and I love that you said like it's a journey, and it's like that's what I say all the time. And I mean, again, I'm not like, oh, look at me, I'm so evolved. No, it's just that I'm reminded how much I don't know, and I think that's just so important that we do remember that like it's a journey. It's a, I always say, I'm a work in progress because we're always able. I think it's great to be curious. That's one of my things that I love, like the fact of being curious, like that you want to learn more, that you want to meet new people. And I'm glad you said that. Like that's what we're all doing, what we all really, as long as we see it, I guess, recognize it. I think it's important. We're never done. We've never learned everything. We've never, I mean, there's always more to learn, which is exciting, I think, about life. The other thing is you brought up, and I wish I could think of the right words about it, about, you said what's community. I think that's so interesting because I listened to a podcast called the Happiness Podcast, and this Dr. Laurie Santos, she did the science of well-being at Yale, and it got national attention because so many students wanted to take the course. So on the podcast they talk about certain things, and it was a book that was written, I forget what they call these things, and I wish I could think of the name, but it was like basically the three things where it was like in the 50s and 60s, or where 70s even, where people went. And it was, as you mentioned, work, home, and then maybe there was a third place like church, or the gentleman who wrote the book used the example of people who do a bowling club like every week. There was the thing, and then we've gotten away from those things, and then when the pandemic hit, it made it even worse. So there are what maybe we think are communities, and it's not, I mean, I'm not dissing those, because some people can't leave their homes, some people maybe
Right.
cannot physically or even mentally, if it's something like they have certain fears or limitations that they have, whatever. So you can find help and hope online. I don't disregard or minimize that. But what is community? I love that you brought that up, because it's like that has changed through the years, and it doesn't look like what it once did back in the day when it was a little more traditional. Not saying that it's a bad thing, but we are kind of missing that. And to your point, where do you go for help? And if you do need some support, or if you just need help with something around your house, like, do you have those people? Do you have the support that you need?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah, one of the funny things, and I always say this to people because it's a line that stuck with me, and it's actually from Shrek when he talks about being an ogre, and there's like it's like an ear, like an onion, and you're peeling layers. Because there's a lot of times where people are like, "Oh, you got here and you got there and you did so much, and like, how did you get to this place?" And then the thing that how it makes sense in my mind and is actually like a comfort and in a way a release is to say that the work is never done. So you get to certain places, and then again, it's like an onion, and you're peeling back another layer, working on something else. And then if you see it as this continuous peeling of yourself, of things, of, epiphanies, of healing, of whatever you want it to be, then it's like once you can, it's like a big sigh of release that like where you're like, oh, okay, so I don't have to be at this place at this particular time, being healed this particular way in this linear fashion. And it just reminds me a lot. And like that's one thing with nature is just the cyclical thing of it, the seasons and things, how they just keep coming back around and around. And sometimes you think you're good. And then, I'm like, oh shit, I'm not good. And I have to revisit this one thing that I thought was like dead and gone and I'm good and I moved on, and that's not how it works. That's not how life works, and it's not how nature works. And to me, that's just something that like one of the ways that I've connected deeply and leaned into nature more is just the seasonal aspect of it and the cyclical thing of how just things keep cycling back around. And I don't know. I mean, as far as my personal journey, that's helped me immensely just in the recognition of that and the ability to let go, where there's some specific timeline where, just 2 days ago, I turned 40 and I'm like, where should I be by now? I'm 40. Should I have this, and this done? And now I don't really care. I'm like, whatever's happening, I, never expected to be at the place that I was at. And things can change at the drop of a hat for anybody at any time. So, being able to have that kind of flow has been so helpful for me at least in what I've done so far. And I've got so much more work to do and joy to find and curiosities and wonder and everything, and it's beautiful in that way of just not being held to that like structured restrictive thing that just makes you feel like a failure, whether it's mental, physical, financial, emotional, whatever it may be. And just letting that go has actually been extremely liberating for
Yeah.
me at least.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And happy birthday. I loved
Thank
40,
you.
to be honest. So enjoy. I'm 53 now, and I have to say, I didn't love I actually celebrated 50, so that was no problem. But I liked 40 a lot. Like a lot of people like, oh, does it bother you? I'm like, it didn't bother me a lot. And honestly, I like my 30s and 40s better than my 20s. Like I feel like I was like a kind of a shy kid. I didn't try things. I've become more curious as I've gotten older. I've become more, I just feel like more open maybe. And like I'm aware, you're talking about the journey. Like I joke with my friends and even myself about how I wish I was less self-aware sometimes because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm self-aware. I know what's wrong with me. Now ask
Oh,
me
it
or
can
what
be such a curse sometimes where you're like, man, I wish I could just turn this off and have the blissful ignorance or like the naivety
yes.
where I'm like, oh, but here I am just already where I'm like aware of this, and this. Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like when you're blissfully ignorant, it's like, well, but I'm like, oh, I'm aware of the things I'm doing wrong, whether it's with my health or with other things. It's like, but then the hard part is the work. Like, okay, how do I address this stuff? How do I make changes that are good and healthy and in the right direction? And I might make baby steps. And I'm like, I don't eat very well. I'll tell you, like nutritionally, I'll be like, I had fruit in oatmeal today. I'm done. Like, whoo, that's it for me.
Well, and for me too, physical fitness, where everyone's like, "Oh, you must be out into the you must be out in the wilderness all the time." And like, I'm not going to talk about work, but because that's not what we're talking about. But you're out in the field all the time, and I'm like, yeah, most of the time I'm, at home or in the office or sitting behind my desk, and getting out is it can be an effort too, where it's sometimes where I'm like, being physically active where I know I need to work out just because some things that are going on just genetically with my body, it would be better for me to do those things. And being self-aware, being like, well, yep, you're not doing it. You can, but you're not. And you should be, but here's X, Y, and Z of all the things that you want to do instead of that. And you're pushing off the inevitable, where it's like, come on, Steph, get into gear and let's go. And I don't still. Like I could talk to myself like that for months with things where I'm like, I have to do better. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, well, shit happens, life's happening. I'm not doing it, I guess. But like the self-awareness aspect of it where it lives like rent free in your head behind your mind
Uh-huh.
for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, let's talk. I want to get into all the survival stuff and your your what how you got into on this path, I guess, with nature and everything. But tell us a little bit about like just a little bit about you and your background. Like I said, I'm Kristen Martelli introduced us online, and you said you're originally from Scranton. Share just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into all the nature stuff and the survival because I'm really curious about that.
Sure thing. So, and then again, I mean, seasons are going to come back in sight and cyclical stuff will return. But yeah, so like I mentioned, I was born and raised in Northeast PA. So I lived in Lackawanna County for the majority of my life until I moved up here to Pike County, just to be a little bit closer to nature and a little bit more in the country. Um, Nature for me, I guess, has been a huge part of my life since I was a kid. Um, and I'm not gonna dive into the rabbit hole or the K-hole of like childhood upbringing, all of that stuff, but nature actually in a way was how we call it the mother. For me, that's nature itself has been a supportive aspect of my life, a sanctuary for me literally since I was a kid, since I can remember. It was the place that I always loved. It was my escape. It was my wonderment, my awe, my curiosity. It checked off every box for me. So it's always been a part of my life and a huge part of my life. So fast forward a little bit, then you get to the things where, life stuff happened, home stuff happened, and I kind of got extremely removed from the child that I was. This inquisitive, introspective kid that was kind of quiet. And unless you talked about something that I loved, then I would light up if someone was like, "Oh, talk to me about bats." Like in third grade, I did this one report on bats, and I went on to everyone in like earshot of my classmates, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, that was cool, but what the hell? Like, what's going? Like, all right, Steph, like enough. We're cool with it." And to me, that was just something that I was fascinated by it, and life led me in a direction that I went completely away from it. And not that I couldn't be near it or around it, but the way that I connected with it and also connected to myself was something that I lost. So my identity changed entirely. What I cared about was more about how I thought other people should perceive, how I wanted other people to perceive me, how the best way to be accepted into society or with the people around me. And then just based off of what happened to me as a kid and growing up with my parents and kind of the childhood home I grew up in, it was very heavy on searching for acceptance, validation, and love away from the things that I loved. Because in the end, it kind of morphed into a thing where it's like, that's weird, you're weird, I don't understand this. And then I shut it all off. I shut it all off so that I could, be the person that went through high school, went to college, um, got a degree, got a job. And in my mind, coming back around to that was a major thing for me. And I haven't seen a lot of places, I don't travel the world a lot. I've only done that in recent years. I've kind of been home here, but that's also something that I love is the ability to connect with nature on a deep level at home, to be able to make a difference in your own backyard, uh, to change who you are, whether it's becoming something or unbecoming and deconstructing. That's a major thing for me to tell people. You don't got to do the eat, pray, love thing where you go on some kind of epic journey to a billion different countries and it changes who you are as a person, or you have the ability to take 6 months off of work or a whole year to hike the PCT or the Appalachian Trail. Some people don't have the ability to do that, and I was someone that did not, and I still found a way to get back home to myself without doing any of those major things that required being brave and flying to a different country, which I had not flown. I only flew for the first time because of the fact that I went to the alone, like, which we'll talk about, the survival trip. That was my first flying experience. Um, but yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm a giant nerd. Like, I've been a writer since I was 11. Harriet the
Oh,
Spy was my that movie, and that character was the person that inspired me to write. So I've been writing since I was a kid. And then now writing about nature is one of my favorite things to do. Um, and like I said, I'm kind of like a home buddy. I'm a bird nerd. I love watching birds. Do I know all of them? No, but it's fun trying to get to know who they are. Um,
and listen to that tweeting, that chirping. When
yeah,
I
they're
hear people
so
say they can't stand it in the morning, I'm like, oh, because for me, it's soothing. I love it.
And right now it's kind of we're at the like the tail end of super baby season, so I have so many bird families and they nest here year round. So right now there's a hummingbird at the feeder like right in front of
Oh,
me, but it's a hummingbird family, eastern phoebes, robins, white-breasted nuthatches, hairy woodpeckers, downy woodpeckers. They all have families right now, so they're bringing their kids all over the place. So it's been like this raucous thing every morning during the day, all over the place. The dark-eyed juncos, they like fly in and out underneath my porch. They're everywhere. So like bird song to me, it's just that's actually what got me into was the pandemic and sitting outside and being like, let me look out my window and see who's here. And then
mhm.
that kind of just evolved to an unpeeling thing where I'm like, I actually want to get to know nature more. Not that it just provides like solace and it's like my therapy for myself, but to get actually getting to know what are the plants, what are the birds, what are the insects, what's the wildlife that's here, and then what can I do in my own backyard to actually create a more habitable place to them and extend because I love home so much. How do I make the inside outside? And then consider that community. And I think that's the thing that's been big for me on my journey too, is just not seeing community as people. It's seeing
Mm,
community as other than human too, because we do all live in community with nature to whatever degree that we're in. And I think that's something that we don't recognize when we consider community, that we just limit it to humans. And I
yeah.
don't think that I don't believe in that. I believe that community has always been um where we're living, like, so the land that we're on, and then what's living there alongside of us. And extending community to that has been like a life-changing thing for me in order to say that I'm building a more deeper connection and more meaningful connection with nature, and having it be more reciprocal too, that it's not just here for my benefit or, here to enjoy as it's a need. It's kind of a cohabitation and coexistence. Um, that I think
Yeah.
that you know, that more people could benefit from experiencing that too, especially in terms of feeling like you're isolated or feeling alone or that you don't have community. To me, I'm never alone. Even when I'm by myself, if I'm in nature, I'm not alone. I've never been. I felt that way as a child and I feel that way now. So,
Mm. Yeah, that's an important point because you're right. As much as I love nature, I didn't think of it that way. I hadn't thought of it as community. And it's interesting. I mentioned the forest therapy class. I'm only in module 2, but even and to hear you say it, I guess I was kind of like, oh yeah, I love nature, like pat myself on the back, like I get out there. But it's really like it's been one sided. I mean, I do put out food in the bird feeder, but beyond that, it's been one sided with me going, oh, I feel good after I go. Like if I've had a stressful day, I feel good after I get in the kayak and I look at the great blue heron and I take a bunch of photos and videos where, I feel good. I feel good. But hearing you talk and then taking this course, it's like, but what can I contribute? And that connection that you're saying too, because I mean, and I'm reading some of this stuff and I have to admit it's going to take me a little bit because it's talking about how the trees talk to one another and like what they remember and how we're connected to. It's deeper stuff than I have experienced or thought about, so I'm like, and I'm open to it, but I'm like, whoa, this is some different stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that's a funny thing too because it's just I think maybe inherently and my grandfather and his influence on me had a lot to do with this because that's kind of how he even in his own backyard just experienced nature, that it was on a level that it's not just it's there, you're looking at it, you're in it. It's having this connection to it, and then a gratitude just for it existing and the fact that it does give you these things. So if you feel peace, if you feel like you're having a bad day and, I'm like, I need to run. Where am I running to? I'm running to nature. And then in that moment, I'm like, I just have so much gratitude that it actually exists, that there's spaces that I could go to where it's literally a heron doing its thing. It's swans floating on the water. It's bugs and dragonflies flying around. It's the tree sitting amongst trees that are still and standing, and in a way it alters my state of being. It calms me down. It changes, you know, emotionally how I am at the moment. And then also being able to just be like, thank you. And it's like you could be talking to the other, you're talking to the universe, you're talking to whatever God construct you believe in, or you're actually just speaking to the things around you. Just the other day, a young fox just came up out of nowhere, and I'm riding my bicycle, and then there he is or she, and he ran away hearing my bike when I just stopped pedaling, and he got spooked by it and then came back again and started sniffing the air like, who are you or what are you? And we just had like a 30-second, a minute transaction between one another. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then I'm like, thanks, little buddy. And, let him go on his way. But that's just a thing where it's like, oh, that's cool or whatever. And to me, I'm like, I don't know, thanks for being around and having that happen, or having trees as companions sitting alongside them, and you're bummed out, you're crying, you have a terrible work day, you don't know where to go, and it's just when you're sitting in nature, like the actual tree is sitting with you in a way. And it's, if you see that in a different way, you could be like, oh, I'm alone and I don't have anybody, or you could be like, I'm completely surrounded by things that are actually supporting me emotionally at the moment without even recognizing that. um and I think when we make everything, if we make nature a destination, it makes it hard to connect with it in that way, to see it as community, because it's like, oh great, I'm going to take this trail and I can't wait to run my loop, or I can't wait to get to the top of this mountain, and like I have to do it by this time, and like to say like, oh, I made it, or I ran it this far, I hiked this far with this particular time. And sometimes it's like I spend more time wandering around in like a quarter-mile radius than I do being like, oh yeah, here I am, like, scaling this peak, going over here, doing this giant loop, backpacking in and out. Sometimes, most of the time, I'm wandering. I'm like wandering around in circles or a little bit off the trail and being like, what's around? Or sitting,
Hmm.
sit spots. And I know that might be big in forests, the like doing the sit spot thing. I don't know if you've got to that
I
yet, but
haven't gotten to that yet. No, no.
that's a thing that I've just done. And then I didn't know it had a name, where I'm like, I just go and I have my favorite places, and you just sit there and you get so still that things just happen around you, because you're not intrusive, you're not loud, you're not trekking, you're not making noise. And then life and nature goes on around you as if you weren't even there. So then in a way you become a part of it. And then that's something that makes me feel like, again, I love my solitude, but I just don't ever feel alone, because you
Hmm.
have that part of it too,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
cool.
you're making me think of and like kind of like shift or change my mindset when I do talk about like, that because I do laughter yoga, so I do that where I connect people and I say it's important, the opposite of isolation, but I hadn't thought of nature in the way that you're presenting it, and I appreciate that, and I'll remember that again, because to your point, you could be sitting there going, "Oh, I'm alone," but it's not just human. You're not alone when you're in nature. You are connecting. That's a wonderful point, because I wouldn't have thought of that. So, like they're saying, this elderly and everything, and a lot of them are isolated and they're in their apartments or whatever. But being out I do see a lot of elderly people, like, or a good amount, I should say, in the neighborhood or in Scranton, who do go out for walks, or, so they are, if they're out there among the trees, they are connecting with something important, and the trees, nature. So that is important. So I want to thank you for that point, because I had not really thought about it that way. That's really important, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's something too that I think in a way it was always there, but then, life happens and stuff happens, and it kind of takes you away from, it's kind of a remembering, like the thing is always there. And I think honestly, it could be with all of us, that there's this connection to nature that it just requires a remembering in a way, where if you're intentional with your experience in it, then it just becomes a natural thing. And then in a way you're like, oh, well, maybe this was always it. I wasn't in the right mindset or the right, like, frame of mind to consider it differently or to have a different perspective, you know? And that was something too that I actually needed to recall within myself, because again, I'm searching for the ways of that, how can nature benefit me, whether it's physical fitness, whether I'm saying like, oh, I hiked this thing, I looked at I went to this really cool place, I climbed this mountain, and then we're taking the pictures and we're posting it on social media, and you're like, look where I was. And which is all good too, because I think people should get out and explore nature. I think people should be in nature, but just having it be more of an immersive experience, I
Mhm.
guess. I mean, there's also a thing called plant blindness too, where it's like you're just generally walking and you're not paying attention to the things around you. And I don't fully understand the concept, but like at the highest level, I get it. Like where you're walking and it's like, do you know the plants you're walking by? Are they native? Have you seen them before? Can you recognize them? And then in a way too, that also builds upon the community aspect, because then there's recognition. So I'm walking by and I'm like, now I can't say I'm good with trees, not yet, not good with mushrooms. I don't even want to try that. We've got the mushroom lover people. I would rely on them fully. The fungi people, that's all you, man. But if there's certain things that I see where I'm like, okay, I can identify this, or there's this plant. Actually just had a moment where there was someone, I did a writer's workshop a couple weeks ago, and it was up in New York, and it was an environmental writers workshop, and someone came from California, and like her favorite place is actually she's LA, like they got lost in the big fires that just happened,
Mm.
but she's like, I just want to take a hike, I want to take a walk. And seeing someone that has no idea about Pennsylvania or East Coast stuff going on a hike, like she's just like, oh wow, and wow, and wow, and look at this over here. And I'm like, oh my God. And like her seeing things that are so familiar to me and getting so excited about the ferns and the greenness and the trees that she didn't know and the plants that she didn't know. Um, and then being able to walk with someone with fresh eyes like that, getting so excited, pumped me up so much just to have that experience with her. And it ended up, we were in a torrential downpour too. It thunderstormed, and we're like, let's just keep walking. And we got drenched and it was awesome. And she's like, I really loved this experience. And I just getting to see someone be so excited about stuff that it's just a different landscape for them, because I've never been anywhere else aside from visiting. So having someone like get to see like Northeast PA and like Northeast Woods for the first time and wandering around in it and getting excited was awesome.
That's always cool to get like re-excited, like you said, or that spark reignited by someone, because it is cool because you're like, oh yeah, like you're re-excited, and it's kind of cool for their vibe and their energy. You're
Yeah.
enjoying that and kind of like being part of it, which is really cool. One thing I do want to share, and I'm sure this will be probably mean something to you, but I was just so far in the modules. I'm only on module 2, but it talked about, and I'll mess up the name, so I won't try to say it, but a certain kind of, I don't know if it's a bacteria, a certain kind of something that's in dirt that they're saying is so good for us. So, the idea of kids playing in the dirt, of course, they love it. And I'm like, huh, this is interesting. Like to actually like that we should be getting dirty, right? That we should be playing in the dirt and getting into the dirt. I just found that I just read briefly about that the other night, and I was like, well, that's interesting.
And and it is too, because I find that funny, because I'm just a person that has been since I was little with the dirt, and even now where I look down if I'm going to work, because this is, garden time, planting time, or being outside. So I don't really like wearing shoes, so I'm barefoot all the time in the summer walking around. So my feet are always dirty, and if my hand, like that's where I say I'm the happiest if my hands are in the soil and I'm working something, I'm in something, or my hands are dirty, like I just generally feel good. And I believe that. I believe that there's just something in that particular, and like good soil, because I know there's conversations too, even with regenerative farming practices and agricultural practices about, dirt versus soil, and how to bring back, like if there's a soil that's unhealthy versus soil that's nice and rich and that dense, dank, like wet, dark, black earth, and you're like holding that in your hands and it's filled with earthworms and the smell is just amazing. And like, I believe that. And I was a kid that just, you had to drag me inside. Punishment to me was forcing me to be like, okay, you're grounded and you're stuck inside. Cause I would disappear from the time, I got up in the morning until the lights came on, the street lights came on, and it was time to come home for dinner. I would just be gone. And my favorite place would just be anywhere where I was outside and near nature, and I didn't care. And so to be covered in dirt all the time with like bloody knees and whatever, from riding your bike and roll like I used to rollerblade and stuff. And it just like that to me was like that was it. And to think that there's some kids that grow up that like you're not playing in the dirt, you're not
Mm,
holding dirt, you're not in the woods. And I think the loss too of like the enchantment of life and like
mm,
your imagination, because if you don't have, and not to say that it's bad, because I do understand, like I've been a video game player, I watch TV. I'm not saying that I'm not someone that does those things, but the things that I could come up with, just not having anything else other than what's in front of you and like your imagination when you're with your friends playing outside, like the games you would come up with, the stuff that you would do, like the adventures you would have, especially when your parents are like, oh, yeah, they're just down the street at whatever, and we're riding our bikes where they don't even have any idea where we are, and the things that we're doing and the stuff that we're coming up with where they'd be like, oh my God. But just that component of it, I mean, that's I think the curiosity and the wonder and the spending time in my own head outside is something that I lost along the way personally. And I think it's really easy to do because we
mm.
don't, I mean, the more and more we're removed from nature, the more and more there's development, less time spent outside. Um, Growing up in a different digital age, like I come from the cusp of having a pager. Like I didn't have a cell phone. I had a pager, and we still had pay phones where my friends would page me, and I'd drive down to the pizza shop, and like they all had their special number, and then I'd be like, okay, now I know who to call on the payphone because it's so and so because they're 3 digits. I bouncing in between that former world and like the world that some kids only know now that we didn't have. I just, to me, I'm like, man, I wish you like got to have even just like a little bit of that. Um, and I think
Yeah.
that people can do that even still, even if they never had that. It's just again a remembering or a reintroduction of things that, you know, and to me that's the fun of it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And it takes some intention. Like, so yeah. And I can't imagine what it's like for kids now. Cause like, oh, I'm a Gen Xer. So I didn't even have a pager, but like, so we didn't have these digital, we did have TV, of course. So we watched TV, but I remember playing like market or something with the girl up the street. And we had these like baby, I don't know if they were onions or whatever it is that we ripped up out of the ground and like pretending that we were playing market or whatever. So like we didn't have anything other than the television. So we had to create. And I just think that is so important. As you said, the enchantment, that's so, and like the curiosity and all that stuff. So now kids having their phones, I'm sure some of them do, but it would be great to encourage more of them to like put the phone down. Let's get off the screen for a little bit and explore because there is so much wonder and there is so much great stuff to be had outside. It really is. And clearly you're enjoying it. I'm so glad that you got reconnected. You seem incredibly happy about it, which is wonderful.
And I mean, like just in, and I can't remember the exact book name, the title, but it was like Radical Joy. It might have been the book, and to me it was like to find that, because like when you're an adult people are like, well, magic is for kids, enchantments is silly, getting excited about simple things like simple joy is it's as you age as an adult more and more it's like there's like a one-upping thing where it's like in order for me to find happiness or for fulfillment, one, it's attached to a lot of material things, so it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to be happy unless I have this particular house, I live on this street, I'm in this neighborhood, I buy this car. And to me, just backtracking that all up and then just evaluating what was always important to me, whether or not you had everything or you didn't have anything at all, is that the ability to find joy in very simple things and just have that intent, like you're walking around with intention, to where even if it's just the sun shining in the morning, enjoying a quiet moment with a cup of coffee instead of having to run right out the door, watching the birds from your bird feeder. To me, those things are just things that, maybe mindlessly, because we're such in a hurry, our calendars are so filled, we're always on the go, that you don't even have the chance to stop and enjoy it to even realize it brings you joy. And for me, that was the thing in the slowdown, to say, okay, when I'm paying attention to these things, who knew how happy I could be just from stuff that people, and I say simple, and it is because it's maybe an everyday thing, but I mean, everyday joys to me are everything. So, I and it also helped me dismantle needing the more. That it's like, okay, well, I have to escalate to this. I have to climb this ladder. I need to obtain these things in order to feel like I'm a productive member of society, that I enjoy being happy. And to me, that has nothing to do with where my happy, like the core of what my happiness is and where my joy comes from, isn't any of those things. And that's also trying to navigate that too, because I'm living in extremes, because, and I'm sure we'll roll into it, that I know some people and have met some people that live on the opposite coin, where they've completely removed themselves entirely from society. They live, in tents, they're off grid 100%. They don't care about all this stuff. And then me, like I have a home, I live in a home, I have, running water and electricity, and still it's like, how do you find a balance where, if you don't want to be the one thing or the other, to try to live in between the two extremes, because you love both things in different ways. And that's kind of what my journey's been, to try to find what my happy medium is as a person, to what brings me joy, and how simple I could bring my life to, without maybe forgoing all of the modern comforts and conveniences of modern society, and saying like, okay, I want to completely just go live in a tent in the woods, and that's what I'm going to do. And that's been a journey in and of itself, to try to figure that out, because I don't want to say it's impossible, and I don't want to say that everyone assumes you have to, again, go to extremes to find those things, because I don't believe that you do.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of understanding at the core of what you want out of life, and then saying no to the things that doesn't align with, and saying more yes to the things that do. And then watch how your life changes when you start doing that. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how it's been. However stumbly and whatever it's been, but that's what I'm just like, I'm gonna start saying no to these things, even though everyone else is saying yes, just because I just don't feel like it's a thing that I want to do anymore. And man, I watched my life change drastically in a couple of years because of that. And then also
Yeah.
being brave and doing things where I'm like, I don't know if I could do this, and then just going and doing it anyway and seeing if I can.
So that's a good place for me to ask. So now I really want to ask you about the survival training you went through. You mentioned that I think you met someone who was on the show Alone, which is like a survival type show, Naked and Afraid. And for anyone listening who may not have seen that, like Naked and Afraid, I forget what channel it was on, but I was watching it, and then they had Naked and Afraid like XL or lots of it was basically two people, usually a man and a woman in the beginning when I started watching it. They had like they were allowed to have like a pouch, and they were allowed to bring one thing. Some people would bring like something to start a fire with. Someone would bring whatever else. And a bow drill, I think, is one thing they used to start a fire. And they would be out there trying to quote unquote live off the land. That's for lack of a better word. And it was supposed to be, I think, 28 or 38, 28 days, I believe, the original. And if they could make it. And, of course, it's a reality show. So you're seeing, and they're filming themselves, and, they could tap out and then they're done. And then they're, obviously they can't win, then can't get the money if they tap out. And, it's very interesting to see the relationship dynamics between people. It's interesting to see who's like out in day one, which I always chuckle. This is just my little hee hee. The guys that are like, yeah, I was in the Marines and I did this, remember? And then like day two, they're like, I just can't do it, man. Like, and I'm not trying, but you know what I mean? It's the ones that are like full of bluster a lot of times, the men. And then you'd see like this woman and be like, wow, she was like kicking butt. So that's the show. And Alone is very similar. So now I'll shut up and say, please tell me all about this.
So I can't even remember how I stumbled upon Finding Alone, and I think already several seasons had been. I didn't discover it when it first came out, because I also don't have cable. So I think it was whenever it ended up popping up on Hulu or Netflix, or maybe it was Hulu or Netflix. And I'm like, oh, what is this, Alone? And then again, I'm like, oh, Alone, like surviving alone by yourself in the wilderness. That's cool. And then I just binge watched every season up until that point, which I can't even remember which one it was. And then it was season 7. So my favorite all-time person was Callie Russell, and she was on season 7. And I loved her just because of the fact that she seemed, because I know a lot of people on that show struggle with actually being alone. So you say that you could go
Mm,
out and do, even if you could have withstood the elements, You could have, you made a proper shelter, you procured food for yourself. It was the mental aspect of not being able to be out there alone, that you missed your family, you missed your friends, you missed your wife, your husband, your kids, and that was the thing that ended up breaking some people, which is understandable. But to me, I always felt so comfortable being by myself. And then just her initial, when you watch that season, her connection with nature on like a deep level, there were just so many things that I saw mirrored within myself that she ended up becoming my favorite person out of all of the seasons. And by chance, just on a whim, I'm scrolling and I'd be like, oh, like I'm wondering, because I do that a lot, like whatever reality TV show is, because we're doing Gordon Ramsay stuff right now, because
Oh,
I've never seen anything Gordon Ramsay, and I'm
I
like,
love Gordon
I'm
Ramsay.
yeah, I'm getting caught up on every single show that but I'm always like, where are if they're my favorite contestant, I always Google, where are they now? What are you doing now? Are you still cooking? Like, even if you didn't win, if I liked you, I want to know what you're doing because I'm just curious. And I just happened to do that one day, and this was in 2023, and I saw that it's called Wild Women on the Water, and she invites people out to Montana, and it's a woman's only thing. And it was like, come learn wilderness skills, nature living entirely off grid, and sometimes survival skills. So that particular year, it was her and then Jesse Krebs, who was also on Alone season 9. Um, and it was the two of them where it's like it's going to be a mix of survival skills and wilderness living. And at the time, I had never even flown alone. I was terrified. I'd only been on a plane once to my senior class trip in Florida, which took all of 2 hours. Uh, so, and I don't, for whatever reason, instilled with me was just this giant fear of flying. And then a thing where it's like I've done things alone a lot, but like taking a plane across the country and going to Montana was something I always said I wanted to do. But then I'm like, that when it came down to it, I was terrified. And but I'm like, I really want to do this. And then also just side story too, which, I'm not going to get into, but like I had where I'm like, I want to build community with like-minded women. And that was something that was a struggle for me because I have really no contact with my mother, and we have an estranged relationship. And growing up with her was a tough, like, so making connections with other women was actually something that was extremely difficult for me, because I was raised by my dad primarily. And I just, based off of what would happen, I just was untrusting of other women, and it felt like I just didn't belong in those spaces. And what seemed so easy for mothers and daughters, for girlfriends and stuff, and best friend connections, it was something that didn't come easy for me. So that was also stepping out of my comfort zone. And I said, hey, if I do this, if I book this flight and I take this plane out, that I'm going to promise myself that I'm not going to be the chameleon, Steph, where I'm turning into the person that I think that everyone wants me to be. I'm going to show up as who I am, whether I'm good at certain things, I'm a natural at other things, I'm struggling at everything else. Um, and I said, let's do it. And honestly, that particular trip changed my life. And not just because of the survival skills aspect of it, it was because I hung out with and got to meet some really awesome people that I still talk to today, that I'm still friends with today, and having the ability to learn from Jesse and Callie, just how they experience life and how they connect with nature, and having that extreme where you're in society in America, but you're also choosing to be completely out of it in some ways. And then in some parts you are not. And how does that work? And I just ended up falling in love, like where we go, it's on the river, it's off grid. So you're not, there's no running water, there's no electricity, and you're there for a week, and you cook by campfire. And we went all day learning different skills. And the first night that we were there, actually, we get a call saying, I picked up a roadkill and I'm driving it on in. And if you want to learn how to process a deer, I mean, that's the necklace. This is a hoof from that deer that I'm wearing.
Oh,
I've been doing it
wow.
ever since. And I wasn't a stranger to processing, since my husband's a hunter and we do our own processing at home. Um, but to actually say this is something like it's, you know, a life wasn't taken, directly. It was found, and they call it like kind of scavenging, where if you're procuring your meat, not necessarily by hunting and killing something yourself, but by default, a vehicular kill is something. And then learning what that looks like. Is the meat good? Is it not? How to determine whether the thing is too far gone to take. But there were girls that had never touched a deer in their life like that, never did anything like that, and just dove right into the experience. And we lived off of that deer for the week.
Mm.
Um, help process and condition and tan the first buckskin that I've ever done. And um, on top of just, learning how to survive, a bunch of different ways, starting fires, uh, you know, cooking by if you don't have electricity and water, what do you do? What are some of the meals that you eat? Smoking the meat. Um, and then one of the goals was for all of us then to go upriver on kayak or canoe and then spend a night on the island by only what we could carry on in a tarp backpack. And you had to set up your own shelter for the night. You were responsible for that. And all we ate was what we could put in a pillowcase for the
Wow.
night. Um, and I just had just the worldview, the wanting to know more about what that takes to do that. And again, something too, just survival as a woman generally, like
Mhm.
being confident in your ability to do things. And they did it in such a way that their knowledge and wisdom, it's not ego driven. Like in some
Mhm.
spaces, depending on what survival spaces you're in, there's a lot of like I don't want to get too much into that, but sometimes it's all like, watch me do the thing, and I'm really good at the thing that I do, and like you're not doing it correct. Like it's not a supportive space to learn in if you don't know anything. So
Mm.
having that ability to just be at ease at whatever comfort level you were learning these things and doing these things was just invaluable because people, I think, and especially women, could get pushed out of spaces like that because they just don't feel comfortable, or they're made to not feel comfortable, or that they
Yeah.
just have to watch while others do. And seeing such confidence and such strength and wisdom and knowledge, like I always say that if there was if the end of times ever happened and I needed to find anyone, Jessie would be the person that I would look for if I wanted someone to survive with, because her out of everyone, like just her knowledge and her skills. And then people would be like, oh, well, she's just a woman. And it's like, no, she's not just a woman. She's absolutely incredible, phenomenal. And same thing with Callie. I mean, she spent exuberant amounts of time even before she was on alone, just trekking the village, staying in tarp tents and just being basically nomadic with her goat herd. And even having fresh goat's milk, and like our coffee was, getting squirts from the actual goat in our coffee every morning. Like that's where we get
Wow.
milk from, and our fresh cheese. Uh, and then that spiraled into a thing where I just didn't want to stop. So I went back last year. Um,
Oh.
I've gone to 2 primitive skills gatherings in Arizona where you're literally just in there, like same thing off grid in the desert. And you spend a week learning from people just like the two of them. Um, Whether it's, making a gourd bowl, tanning hides, wet felting to learn how to make things from wool.
Mm.
Um, and a really great thing is just for me, ethically, the reuse of things, stuff that we tend to discard, things that we throw away, stuff that we see as garbage or waste, and the amount of things that we consume generally as a society, and then watching how people make no waste of literally everything, that anything could be turned into anything, even if it's making a bone tool from the bone of an
Mm.
animal, making it a needle from that. It just fascinated me. And I'm like, I just need to know more. I have to know more about this, and I want to learn how to do these things instead of just visiting, like being a bystander and being like, this was a nice vacation. I'm like, no, I want to take all of these things and I want to keep building on them after I left. And that's kind of how it's been ever since. And then I decided to be brave in March and do Jesse. It had a thing in Vermont where it was a survival camp over in winter. So it was like 20 degrees outside and we were in Vermont off like
Oh,
just,
wow.
yeah, uh spending the weekend outside. Which to me, I'm a baby kind of when it comes to the cold. So I'm like, let's find a way to challenge myself a lot and see if I could do all of this outside when it's not favorable, when it's not 60, 70. When it's
Yeah.
windy, it's snowing, there's snow on the ground, there's ice on the ground, and then how do you take care of yourself
Mm.
when you're in that kind of conditions? So yeah.
How would you say that? Obviously, I'm listening to what you say, and I love the idea of like, because this is something important to me, and I've had this as a conversation on the podcast. And this year, I did a project, Restart Scranton, where we picked up litter and we used some of the found items into art. I love that idea of finding ways to use things and not just throwing them away. But as I hear some of the skills you've learned, what would you say you've taken from it most? Do you ever see yourself applying it in your everyday life, or is it difficult when you come back to, and I think this goes back to what you had said earlier, finding that space between the two extremes, because you've had enough experiences that you've learned some really cool things and you're out there, and then you come back to the house with the cool stuff and how does it, like, how do you feel about that? Or how do you sometimes challenge yourself to say, well, I want to, just so I don't forget? Or, and I don't even know, my question might be muddled, I'm sorry, but
No, no, no. I totally get it. Because I think something that my husband and I joke about, where he's like, if I didn't exist and you didn't have this house and the animals weren't here, I'm not sure you would come back. And sometimes when he says that, sometimes I'm like, maybe you're right, because I might not. I because I did have the opportunity too to stay like and if it wasn't for work, there was a back-to-back thing where there was the Wild Women on the Water that Kelly was hosting, and then she was doing a sheep hide tanning thing right after. And she's like, you just don't have to go home. You could just cancel your flight and stay for the rest of this other week. And a long part of me for a long time of that day went, I could do that. I could just not come back. And then I'm like, well, no, I actually have real life and this job and, a husband that loves me and animals that I want to, and a home that I actually love now. Because for a long time I felt knocked out of place, that I didn't really have a place that felt safe and supportive that was mine. I bounced around a lot. I didn't really have that feeling of home. I never, and I think that was also something that I was chasing when I was looking for these things, is what does home feel like to me? And I'm not sure if I ever knew what that was. And that a lot of times I couldn't relate, because everyone that I talked to, or most of the people that I talked to, were new at the time, that were like my core friends group, whether they spoke about it or not, couldn't identify it, because of the fact that their life experience and lived experience at home, they had great relationships with their parents, or it wasn't as extreme as mine on the negative side of that. So home, not feeling like they had a home, didn't resonate with them. And when I was there, actually, I kind of felt home there too, which is weird, because I'd never been, I'd only been to Montana like briefly for a vacation, and it just, for a weird thing, it just felt like I was connected to that place. And I'm like, how do I keep that then when I come back? So to answer your question, um there's a lot of times where I want to do more things than I can, but I do what I can here. So, there's dandelions in the yard, and I harvest them, and I make like lotion bars, and I make soap from them, because it's just something that I could do from home, learning what, if I'm looking in and around here back in PA, the plants and trees and the life is a little bit different than out west. I'm like, what are the things that might be medicinal, that maybe I can make something from? Uh, Connecting too with local people. We know a processor now that, again, like when it comes time for hunting season, most of the time deer hides are thrown in the garbage. They're a waste,
Mm.
they're considered a waste byproduct. So for the amount that comes in when people are looking to just have the meat source, what's happening with the hides? And we found someone that said, hey, well, I'd prefer not to throw them away, so if you want them, whatever you could fit in your freezer, have at it, come up and take it. Maybe I'll make sure that I'm, taking the hides off a little bit more carefully if I know that they're going to someone, versus knowing that they're just going to get thrown away. Um, so also learning too that when you only have so much freezer space, what do you do with hides then, if you can't just cram your entire freezer full of deer hides, but you want to do things with them? Um, so there's a process called wet salting where you could do that, and the hide stays fine for up to 6 months, non-refrigerated,
Mm.
sitting out. So I'm like, can I teach myself that? Um, and then getting better at learning how to make buckskin. Then we did buckskin there, but I'm like, I want to actually move through the process myself, learning how to move from the hide from start to finish and do it on my own. And there's intervals within that process that you could stop. So if life gets in the way, I could do a little bit. You could freeze something, you could dry something, you could come back to it later on, um, which is nice. Uh, Asking around and being like, "Does anyone shear sheep around here? Does anyone have sheep wool? Like, do you got stuff around that I could kind of like take if you're just shearing it and throwing it in the garbage or you're not selling it or making fiber from it, if it's excess, can I have it?" It could be all poopy and gross. I'm like, I want to work with it either way, but finding people that do that. Um, and then the other thing is nature writing. That's the biggest thing I think that in having these experiences and then also being out in nature and how I connect with it is learning to take some of my writing then and translate that to and sharing it with people too has been kind of something that's been important to me because it's a way to connect people with the things that maybe they haven't experienced yet or to see bugs differently, their
Mm.
backyard differently. Because that's something else that we've been doing is like over the course of the since we've been here, I've right now I'm over maybe 40 different species and over 100 different individual plants, trees, and shrubs that I've planted in this backyard, and they're all
Wow.
native. So taking everything that wasn't native out, putting all these native things in, and then taking the time to document how this backyard has evolved from what it looked like when we bought it to what it's like now. And then just seeing the entire landscape, the wildlife that comes in, and the recognition that it's not just the cute stuff like bunnies or deer that come in. It's even just the bugs that you're starting to see, and changing people's thought process about like that everything is just ick, and sometimes stuff has a purpose, and uh, and how do you cohabitate with stuff that normally you'd be like, "Oh my god, well, bring the chemicals out and like let's do
Mm.
this thing." Um and just kind of how differently I view things and trying to do it from a semi-science background without having a science background. I just say like maybe like I'm a citizen naturalist. I don't have any formal training. I don't have a degree in science. It's just I'm so interested in it that that's what I like learning about. And then finding a way to translate even with work related things, super science dense technical stuff that's hard for people to if you're not a scientist to kind of like get behind and taking that and writing it in a way where it people can make connections to it that's relevant to them and makes sense. Um, and I love because that's the one and only thing that I'll always say that I'm good at if anyone asks, and I'm like, I just love to write. And whether I'm good at it or not, it's just the thing that I could say I have the most confidence in and
Mm.
trust in. So that's been my thing to try to do. And then whenever I can, if I could get back out, I'll go on these trips and stuff. But again, that's money, it's time away from work.
Yep.
A lot of the stuff happens out west and there's not really a lot of it's not very big over here in the northeast and especially in our area and maybe
Mm.
trying to bring some of that here too that if there's things that I can share with people especially women um and not anything against guys like nothing against it but I just having women feel confident in outdoor spaces and camping and hiking have it not be where you could stumble your way across it without being made to feel like an idiot, I guess, because that can
Yeah.
easily happen, where it's like, g I was given an opportunity to have such a safe, supportive space to learn from women that have been doing like, that live this type of life, and then have that knowledge and wisdom and training, and have it just be so open and freely shared and given, that if I could do that even in the teeny tiniest little way that's not even close to the level of which they do live or know, then I feel happy about that. Um, and then doing mini shifts, being like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if these are, if I can just opt out of certain things, then maybe I won't shop like this. Maybe I'll be more intentional in my purchases. Maybe there's things that I feel like I needed then, but I don't necessarily need now, and I could let go of. That makes it kinder on the earth or less material in the way that I live. And I know I keep saying simple, but to me, that's what it is. It's just like a simple existence and treading as lightly as possible while also giving back is something that I think that any one of us can do. And
Yeah.
you don't have to be an extreme like you don't have to live that extreme way and live in a tent somewhere to do that. Um but it involves being uncomfortable a lot with making decisions that you're like, or foregoing things that would just be like that to you, and thinking about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything that you're saying. And obviously, when I like, how do you use it? You're using it quite a bit. It's funny you mentioned the dandelions because that's something that I remember seeing Kristen posting about this summer. She was like in love with dandelions. And in fact, one of our mutual friends, his husband made some kind of lotion from dandelions. And I ran into him and he's like, I can't stay, but I know you're going to see Kristen here in a minute. Can you pass this along? I'm like, sure. But I remember seeing her post all about dandelions, and how she used to like, I'm obsessed with them at the moment or whatever. So it's funny you mentioned that. I would love to learn how to do something, and I guess again, I have to figure it out. Not just it's not going to come with a magical fairy like and just put it in my brain. I have to read or watch videos like to do more with lavender because I love lavender so much. I mean, I this summer, unfortunately, I don't have it, but I did have it in a container last year, and I would just put my finger over them and just like even then smell my finger.
And the way that it smells.
I just love that
Did
how
you
it
know there's a
smells.
lavender farm here?
I know there are a couple, like there's one in like maybe the Schuylkill area, but there's one near you?
Yeah, it's in like it's not by me, but it's in the East Stroudsburg-ish area
Oh,
where
okay.
I've
I knew there were a
driven.
few.
Yeah, I've driven by it and just it caught my eye because when it was all in full bloom, I'm like, "Oh, what's this field of I was like, "Oh man." I'm like, "Look at how beautiful." And then there was just a little sign and it was like something such lavender farm. And I'm like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "That's so cool."
I
But yeah,
love
there's
that.
a farm up here. But yeah, like, geez, the medicinal properties from like the flower right down to the root, dandelion like it covers all of it. And now I kick the puffs all over the place so that I could like it grows in my yard freely. Um, and I just get so excited when it's just the sea of yellow. One, because I have always loved them since I was a kid, and two, I'm like, wow, I could actually make things from it. I make bath bombs too, which
Mm.
are amazing. My skin is just so nice afterwards. But yeah, it's just kind of stuff like that where maybe it is considered like, because there's a lot of things that I think if you walked around my yard, people would be like, wow, look at all the weeds in here. Like, don't you weed whack? Like, do you weed whack? And the point was actually to deconstruct our lawn and make it's big enough now to have the dog have his run. And then everything else we kind of just let grow wild. Or I'm trying to like mimic meadowscapes, or even if we can implement some type of little rain garden section of things and working with the type of land that we have. Some spots are drier, other spots are wetter, depending on where you are in the yard. Um, were there things that were overgrown here that need to be taken out? The man that built this house actually was a master mason, so his stonework is incredible.
I
But he
can see
actually,
that behind you. It's
yeah,
gorgeous. Yeah.
it's so like I'm always it never ceases to amaze me. His ability, like just this house is just fabulous, and that's all kind of I ever wanted was a little stone cabin
Mm.
or a cabin to live in. And I'm like, woo, this one's made of stone, and I just have such gratitude for being able to be here. But he planted something called it's like Vinca minor, periwinkle. It's like an ivy,
Oh.
and it's so invasive to the point where it just is overrunning everything. And it's
Mm.
going to be a several year process to get it removed. And maybe I should have paid attention to it a little bit earlier. And I thought, oh, well, it's only on the hill. I could take care of it. But just in moving that back, like that's just a thing to me. It's just a way to connect with this land, a labor of love to say this doesn't belong here. And it's snuffing out things that do belong here. And little by little, not like, oh, I'm going to come in and I'm going to burn this thing. I'm going to spray it with chemicals. I've been painstakingly removing it by hand. And not to
Mm.
say that certain applications, yes, when you're working with invasive stuff, applied small levels of things to remove stuff when you're using like herbicides or chemicals is actually like it's necessary. In this case, I don't feel like it is, so I'm not doing that. Um, but that's not to say that other places when it's being overrun so densely with invasive species that that's something it works, and it's a method that isn't it does its job without hurting the environment. So as much as we can be chemically free here and pesticide free, we are. Um, but just in doing that, watching what's coming up now that it's not there anymore, and just being like, wow, okay, I don't see it. And like, look what's happening. Same thing with garlic mustard. I pulled a crap ton of it over the last couple of years, and because that's also invasive. And then even mugwort. Mugwort is invasive. I use mugwort. I love like cleansing and smoking with it. I dry it out and use that. But again, if not taken care of and managed properly, it could overtake all of what's here. But yeah, I'd be a weed whacker's like it'd be a weed whacker's dream up here where everyone would be like, I can't wait to come down and take this all down to the ground. Uh, but understanding of what when it comes up, is it native? Does it
Mhm.
have medicinal properties? Even if it doesn't, does it serve a purpose to the local like biodiversity scale of what's here? And getting to know things more on that level instead of just looking at it and being like, oh, well, that's pretty, or I don't know what that is. It's learning more about it. And same thing with the bugs. It lessens, like, it just makes me feel more connected to what's around. And then also, low key, I had a kind of fear of spiders. So getting to know them more, um, which is weird because I didn't as a kid, but then somewhere along the way I did. And then moving up here when you have the wolf spiders and the dark fishing spiders, which could be like the size of your palm,
Oh,
like
wow.
hanging around in the house. Uh, I'm like, oh, okay, like we're gonna have to work something out here where I need to know you guys. But now, I mean, I think that's something too, because people always ask that, how could I get over my fear of this thing? Or I don't really like bugs and I always spray them or I smush them or I kill them. And I'm like, get to know what it is. Just like a person, you might be scared of someone or on like a thing that's unfamiliar or uncomfortable until you get to know them potentially. And then maybe they're not as scary. So a lot of things show up now all over the place. And I'm like, ooh, and again, maintaining, like we talked about, curiosity, wonder, what is this thing?
Mm.
Um, we get Dobson flies on the porch, which are about like, and they're actually an
Wow.
indicator of not really good water quality if you see them.
Huh.
But I mean, there's not a major water source that's around here, like a lake or a pond, but they show up on the porch sometimes. And the males have really big pinchers. And you're like, what is this thing? Uh, and to someone that doesn't like bugs, you're like, whoa. And then learning what they are and just being like, oh, wow, okay, so then your being here means that like there's pretty decent water quality in the area. That's really kind of cool. Uh,
Yeah. I think I saw one of those. I was with my friend and we were walking on a trail in the Lehigh Valley. She lives in Northampton. And I believe that was because I had to do like a reverse search lookup. And I was like, oh my God, it was like a huge thing and it looked
yeah,
not so pretty. And her daughter has a degree in environmental science. And I think we sent it to her and said, oh, that means the water quality is good. That had to be the same one. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm just like, well, and then in my mind, I'm like, great, well, if I'm seeing you, then that means that something is good around here, that things are working, that the environment is, conducive enough for you to exist here, because in turn there's some bug life and insect life that is so sensitive to pollution that if you don't see them, then that's when there's a problem. So
Mm,
actually having the ability to see them is like, oh wow, then that means our water quality is great. And that's also something about our area, is that we have a pretty high concentration of exceptional value and high quality streams in our area here in the Poconos. And maintaining that, it just means it's cold water fisheries. We have native producing brook trout and stuff like that, is just where, if you're traveling further down south, if you're going into Philadelphia, and when the water quality starts diminishing, you start to think about like, okay, well, and everything flows downstream, right? So everything that we do up here also affects, it maintains what we have here, but it also affects everyone downstream from us. Same thing with
mm,
watersheds, everything flows down. So when you consider the greater community, or you encompass nature included in your human community, then the things that we do, to me at least, matter more. Where if you're being more conscientious about the stuff that you're doing, because in turn, you're also helping your nature community, the other than human community, by maybe not doing certain things or opting out of certain stuff or not spraying the chemicals, or, you know, changing your lights at night. Like if you're a major migration flyway, or you're in town and you're putting up spots where maybe a bird's flown however far and you're the only source of water and food for them with a whatever mile radius, so that they have a resting stop on this long incredible journey that blows my mind. They do all of the time. Same thing with the monarchs, where you're like, wow, I can't believe you travel like that. That you're still helping, you're making a difference, and it seems sometimes so small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it's really not though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to say, I could probably listen to you and we could talk for like a long, long time, but I'm going to start to wrap up here. But oh my gosh, truthfully, I could listen to you. So I want to ask you
Did I
two things.
ramble too much?
No, 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 but because I'm curious and I think it's interesting what you're saying. No, you're sharing so much information that I love it. But I want to ask two things as we close. So you're writing, is that somewhere that people can read or is that just for you?
I'm working on making that accessible. So right
Okay.
now, most of the time where I get weird about it. I share it on Facebook and it's who's ever my friends. And then people are like, wow. And then I don't make it public because then again, I'm like, I don't want one of those people that have a personal pay. But I think what I might do then if I keep doing that is that like I signed up to Substack and then haven't written anything, which I feel like I should. And two, I'm also like currently right now in the middle of writing a memoir. So, and that's what it is actually it's half memoir, half nature writing, where it's
Oh,
just this whole thing, this like journey of connecting to nature um and trying to find a way to weave connecting with it in a way that, has been such an influence on my life. Uh but that won't be that's a long time coming. But I think, yeah, if I could get my Substack going, and then also too, I haven't been as active on it too, because I have this funny thing where I'm trying not to be so active on social media, but then again, when you need to be, because like that's how you connect with people now,
mm,
where I it's called the Feral Network, so it's just like a group page that's just for people that love nature. And it's a private group where if you want to go and share, sometimes I share my writing there. But I think I need to find a way to get better at doing that and not where I'm like, what's the good balance where you're I'm chronically posting things and writing and sharing, and I'm terrible at marketing myself, which is bad too, because Kristen all the time she's like, you should, plug this or talk about this. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that, but I'm not really good at it, so I don't know. Because she's always like, I love your writing. And I'm like, and yeah, and then I just don't make it public and I just leave it to the people on my page. So yeah, I do need to get better at that. But yeah, I do have a Substack I think it's just the handle's This Wild Thing, but I haven't written anything there yet.
okay. Well, we can tell people to keep it in mind and to check it from time to time because maybe you'll put something out there soon. Do you want to
Yeah.
share? I'm sorry, do you want to share? I know you have something coming up, but I don't know if that's something to put for the public, like a camping experience. I don't know if
Oh
that's
yeah. So and something what I'm trying to do then is kind of how I was saying to get community, especially women in the wilderness and kind of get people comfortable. It was just it's a weekend trip coming up in September at the end of it, September 19th to the 22nd. Um, where we're just going to be on the Jersey side of the Delaware River. And it's just a couple night trip where it's kind of the same thing where it's just community hanging out with one another, cooking meals by campfire, um, doing maybe some survival type of stuff or even just nature, because I'm a big fan too of just adults doing crafting things and like as a way to disconnect, and it is not, and to remove the whole thing where you're cutting the line between what's childish and what you could do as an adult. I just don't believe in that. So like exploring nature in a way where you're actually like in it, a lot like forest bathing concepts, where we're really just present and just to disconnect with like-minded people or people that are interested in this stuff. And it doesn't even require any type of camping experience. You could just be a complete newbie and have no idea what you're doing, and that's completely okay because that's exactly what I want. I want people that maybe weren't comfortable doing it alone or weren't sure what to do, and then you wanted to be with a group of people that also were not sure, and some people kind of know what they're doing or they're not, and just get out there and just start doing it. Like take the leap to just go and do it. Um, and then not have it centered around where we're doing a whole bunch of stuff all of the time. I really just kind of finding the balance between chill and doing some things. But if someone was interested in that, I mean, again, it's Stephanie Uhranowsky. You could just find me on Facebook. Since I don't actually have an actual like email address that's connected to anything, it's just my personal. But if you look me up, anybody can message me at any time, and
Okay.
my inbox is open.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Cause I know Kristen had said to you, like, share it in the group that we're in for some, women that we're working on a project coming up. But, I thought that was interesting. So, if you're interested, ladies, there's, September, on the Jersey side, right, of the Delaware Water Gap. So, a weekend trip, something September is a beautiful time of year. It's one of my favorite times anyway.
Me too.
So, I want to thank you so much, and believe me, you're not rambling at all. It's just I usually try to keep these to about an hour. We went a little over, but I could sit and listen to you and talk to you forever. But I just wanted to wrap it up. But I want you to know that I have appreciated your time and everything that you've shared. I mean, and you absolutely have shifted my mindset, because again, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I'm into nature, but like I was doing a one-sided thing, and you have me open my eyes to the idea of it being community, but also immersive, being more immersive about it, and being more the curiosity and learning more about the plants, about the bugs, about all that stuff around me, and just learning more and seeing what I can do to help with that. I think that is just, those are some key things that I think any one of us can do, even if people who don't like to be outdoors, just learn something. Because if you're afraid of it, like, what is it? I use that reverse lookup all the time with whether it's a bug or a plant or something, because I'm like, well, what is this? And I think that's important that we do that. So I thank you for opening up this conversation, and hopefully people will take something from it to like want to be curious and want to get out there and learn more. Maybe they're not going to spend a ton of time out there, but maybe if they just decide to like learn a couple things that they didn't know before, I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think that's something too where again, where, if we're in a world of extremes where people think that you have to just go all in, when it's
Mhm.
something like this, I don't think that you necessarily have to. And I think you could actually just look outside your window, go to a pocket park, and maybe you're not in an area that has like where you have acreage or something that's close, but you can, if you put bird feeders out, birds will come. If
Yep.
you're taking a walk down the street. There's so many things to notice, even if you're in the city. Um, there's life coexisting all around us. And I think that, in order for people to feel like, oh, I'm fully immersive or I'm doing something special, like you're in the Rockies or you're like in the remote wilderness and you're gone somewhere and you're not in town. And it's like, no, because putting something out on a back porch, planting something that something might come along, putting up a hummingbird feeder, having a bird bath out. It doesn't matter what size your yard is. It doesn't matter where you are. Uh, Our our adjacentness to nature is everywhere, and it could be found in all of these places where it doesn't have to be like this magical getaway somewhere where you're totally lost in it. It's all around us. And I think the attentiveness and paying attention and then just keeping that curiosity and not always eyes forward or eyes, where you're walking and you're like this with your phone and you're looking and you're not paying attention. It's just
Mhm.
sometimes it's nice to just put that thing down and walk around and look, and you could find so many things that you weren't even paying attention to that are right
Yep.
there in front of your face. And I'm guilty of it too all of the time, or being in my head with problems and stuff, and
Yep.
I'm not I'm just walking and wandering and there's all these things happening and I'm not aware of my surroundings, and we could just miss so much stuff. And I think that's the thing of just tuning in, and it takes some time, but once you start doing that, it's like your brain trains yourself to do that. So then you're constantly paying attention to stuff then, and you're more aware. And to me, it's just that's been the fun of the journey, is learning all of these things where I'm like, wow, I don't literally know shit. And then you're looking around, and then now you're like, okay, I'm getting better. I'm knowing things. I don't need to be an expert and I don't need a degree. I just need to care. I want to be respectful and I'm curious, and really that's it. And it's like you don't have to have a specialty in it. It's just to connect with nature, to care about it. Um, and thank you so much for having me on. This was awesome. Um, I feel like you asked me a question and I could just shoot off like a rocket. And
That shows
so
again though how passionate you are about what you're learning, and I think and what you've learned and what you want to share, and caring, the caring is obvious there. So I thank you so much, and I have to thank Kristen for
Thank
connecting
you,
us.
Kristen.
Yes, yeah. And I think that is so important. And then I'll zip it because otherwise I could go off. But I do, like, I'm a big fan of connecting women and in different ways. And I've gotten to know so many different women. I'm in Scranton from being out there, but also from other people saying, "Hey, do you know this person?" And learning their gifts so that we can share with one another. And I just think it's so important that we keep doing that. And it's a network of support, but it's a network of sharing knowledge and sharing just all kinds of good stuff that we can achieve together and learn from one another. So I think it's great. Yeah.
And thank you for hosting a platform like that has the ability to do that, because I think it's so important. And whether it's by someone you know bringing someone in or you seeking someone else out, it's so great to just hear other people's stories, lived experiences, and have the ability to just connect people together. And it's very much needed right now. So thank you for
Yeah.
all that you're doing too.
Well, you're welcome and thank you. So thank you so much for anyone listening. That's Stephanie Uhranowsky. So if you are interested in that camping trip, Stephanie, as she said, she's on Facebook. And check out maybe the Substack at some point. She might have some writings out there because I would love to read it. And I
This
know I
might
think
kick me in the ass to start doing something with it and being like, okay, do it.
yeah,
This
well, if
is,
you need a reason, here it is,
yeah,
right?
here it is right here.
Here's your sign. This is it. Well, thank you again. And to my listeners, stay tuned. In a couple of weeks, I have this great conversation with Katana Miller. She is the supervisor of the STEM program in the Scranton School District. And our conversation was just so good. I love what she's doing there with the STEM program. I think the skills the young people, the students are learning are fabulous. We even ventured a little bit into AI, and it was just a really cool conversation. And I think a lot of it's relatable, even if you don't have kids. I don't have kids, but it's still interesting, relatable, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation. And as I say every week, if you know a woman, or maybe it's you, that you think is interesting, has a story to share, I just want to inform, inspire, and entertain my listeners, reach out to me. Don't be afraid. Give me a suggestion, even if it's you or a friend or just someone please connect. Although it is helpful if they would like to be on the podcast. We don't want to force anyone or have them get on here and be like, yep, that's what I did. So you want it to be someone who's comfortable talking with me. That would be great. The other thing I'd like to mention, if you're interested in supporting these kinds of conversations, I'm always open to podcast sponsors. I'm excited about my latest new podcast sponsor, but I'm always open to anyone who might want to do that. And as I say, if you have a coffee, I won't say addiction, but if you like to have a coffee out a day for a month, it is actually cheaper to be a podcast sponsor than that. Just to give you an idea, the sponsorship packages are affordable. So I will wrap there and thank Stephanie once again. And I already thought I appreciated nature, but she has me looking at it through a different lens, which I am so grateful for. So as I say every week, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.